We begin our coverage this evening with the continuation of the national vote recount from the Archichong Conference Center. We're here live with Rhonda and Lam from the Citizenship Initiative. Rhonda, could you give us an update more or less on how things went today?
With the addition of the news stations, we have 2 news stations that came on track this week. We've seen the box count jump. So this is 2 days now in a row that we've managed to count and tabulate 80 plus boxes. So that has sped up in terms of the progress. Ideally what we're looking at though is 100 plus boxes a day in order to complete, like for instance, even to make the deadline and just beyond a week more, we're going to have to do 100 plus boxes a day. And at this rate, we're definitely not going to make that, 25-day deadline in that sense.
I was just curious about whether, as parties, you're given an update on what efforts GECOM is making to speed up the process. We had heard that the GECOM chair had written for an additional 2 workstations from the COVID-19 task force.
What we've seen, for instance, when the 2 earlier this week that were going to be added, we were notified of that, that we would need additional people, those kinds of things. Most parties have sent in large lists. So we had people, you'd be able to put in those stations, and then we're allowed to update that list weekly, just in case we need, new agents or you need to switch out those kinds of things. So GECOM will tell us when if permission is granted for those 2 new stations, and from when we're expected to field 2 more agents.
Could you give us an update on how things are going on in the tabulation room?
Today we've cleared the backlog. This week they added an extra hour to tabulation. It used to start at 4 to 6:30, and now it's starting from 3 to 6:30. So today we're able to any backlog that we had, we're able to cover that. So at this point, boxes counted and boxes tabulated should be matching in that sense.
So what number is it now, if you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, no. But we update every evening on our website, including the counts for regions 1 and 2, which have already been certified. And so, anyone going on the page could go to GuyanaResults.com and they'll be able to see individual regions as well as tabulated box counts, how many boxes processed per regions and things like that. But it's quite a few thousand votes in that sense. I believe it's 923 boxes we've completed so far out of the total amount. Don't hold me to the figure directly though.
Right. And so as parties, I just wanted to ask you about your role after when the certificate is being prepared, after the statements of recount are tabulated. Is your role a witnessing role, or is it an absolute role that you must sign that certificate? Of course, I'm asking you against the background of Region 2 certificate not being signed by the APNU plus CFC.
Now, what I understand it's a certification process, meaning that GECOM is still to decide whether they're going to use the recount figures for that final declaration. So what we're doing is certifying that the votes that were recounted are actually tabulated correctly within the room. APNU AFC, the person said that he was not signing because the certification contained the word valid votes and there were a number of anomalies. Now, realistically, the tabulation room can only count those SORs as they're sent to us. However, those SORs have to pass through the Secretariat. So obviously, if they're sent to the tabulation room, it means it's more or less met the sniff test. At least that's how I'm viewing it as. Because I have the full spreadsheet of all the ballot boxes. And there are a couple of ballot boxes that I knew were counted. I saw the SOR, but it didn't get into the tabulation room until days later. So clearly there's a process that GECOM is following. Now at this point, he clearly didn't sign it. The rest of us did. I don't see how it would affect anything that GECOM uses, because when we looked at the first 2 declarations, especially for Region 4, only one party signed it and they still went ahead and made a declaration. But again, this is not a declaration per se. This is a certification of tabulated results. So it's all gray area at this point, and we're just waiting to see what GECOM will do.
But of course, you're hoping that what comes out of this process is what will be used to make a final declaration.
Of course, because like for instance, when we saw the results for regions 1 and 2, the anomalies, when I say anomalies, in terms of the tabulation, for instance, one party lost 22 votes, but that was because valid votes were counted as invalid and that sort of thing. Region 2, the margin was a lot narrower. The vote count was off by like 1 or 2 for some parties, 3 for the bigger set. So both regions 1 and 2 have fallen within the margin of error, up or down. And so it's hard to argue that, you know, the count on E-night was not credible. What we're seeing happening now, though, is all of these anomalies, other anomalies, things like asking if voter so-and-so voted, and, you know, did they have certificates of employment, and all of these kinds of things. So ultimately, those are anomalies that are now being introduced by parties. Well, one particular party. Whether it will have an effect, I don't know. GECOM has not made given us any kind of indication that it will have an impact or it will not have an impact.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, Rhonda. We really appreciate it. We were speaking with Rhonda Anlan, the leader of the Citizenship Initiative, on just how the recount process has been going thus far. We want to move straight into a conversation with Lennox Schumann from the Liberty and Justice Party. Lennox, thank you for joining us. I know you've had a long day, so we really appreciate you staying back. I just want to pick up from where we left off that conversation with Rhonda. These so-called anomalies and irregularities keep coming up. I just wanted to have your thoughts on those. Today we were hearing the claims seem to be mounting regarding certificates of employment that people did not have, but they still were able to vote.
Neil, thanks for having me here. And to carry on that discussion, it'll be a great thing. But before, and since I'm just coming on, I want to acknowledge maybe a certain sense of sanity that happened in Guyana today. And I'm really, really happy about it, which is the repatriating of Guyanese to Guyana. It's long overdue, and I'm hopeful that we are going to expedite that process to get our people home as quickly as we possibly can. It's something that we had been advocating for the longest while. In terms of what has been said, I saw Mr. Jonas, Mr. Anil Nandalal, and Mr. Norton. They all have, obviously, their position on the issues. And I quite support Mr. Jonas's position that it is unfortunate that the media is being denied the essence of what is going on in there. Because had the media been present in that structure, you would see the very pattern that Mr. Norton, Aubrey Norton, is talking about. And it is simply allegations. There are certain stations where they went in and objected to numbers above the voting population in some of those cases. I think one of them ended at 296 voters in one specific area, and they're objecting to 300, 301, 302 and stuff like that. So all they're doing is just picking a bunch of numbers out of a hat and say this is what we're going to use today. And in some cases they're objecting to their own voters. So there has been no evidence that has been presented to support any kind of claims that they're making. There are also wider issues which would be interesting to see how they intend on addressing it. If they say they're going to present it to the Guyana Elections Commission. If, for example, they say, well, we have a death certificate from Lennox Schumann and his whole family that perished, well, how did you come onto that document in the first place? Because the law, I don't think, permits just anyone to go and apply for that. It has to be the next of kin. So how did you get that? Are you breaking the laws to get information? If now you say that Lennox Schumann is out of the country, and these are just allegations, right? But if you say Lennox Schumann is out of the country, how did you come onto that information? You can't say you got it from the ground. Basically, what you would have done is broken the law to go and research someone illegally to suit your partisan political interests. Those things are very concerning to us, and it would be very interesting to see. They said they're providing the evidence to the Guyana Elections Commission. We saw a sheet with obviously names on it. Those things have been widely circulated, and I don't see that as any kind of evidence, you know. So it would be interesting to see what they come with next.
Of course, the 25 days is soon approaching. It doesn't look like this process will be completed by then. Could you give us an idea of how long those objections may take? Like if I object to 1 to 10, how long does that process take in a counting station before you move on to what you have to do?
Well, let me reaffirm something that Mr. Nandalal said on his piece today. is that what our agents have noticed in these counting stations is that they only seem to be objecting in strongholds that are not theirs. Where it is predominantly APNU AFC strongholds, the objections go down to absolutely nothing in some cases. So there's more of a pattern being developed that...
That's after Belladrome.
Correct. After they got that part right, that they're pulling numbers out of a hat. So that in itself is worrying to us. We know that they're not interested in completing Region 4. At least that much is evident, right? I presented a document to the Guyana Elections Commission 2 days ago, which pretty much laid out how long it is going to take. And under the current framework, it should take about 49.5 days for Region 4. Now, if you were to up that station to 7, it's going to take 21 days. And if you up it to 8, it'll take 18 days. So that just gives you a sense of where we are and where we potentially will end. They are going to add 2 more stations is what we've been told. No confirmation yet. We're hopeful that they put those onto Region 4. And then we start, as stations come available, we start stacking them to the most needed sections. In terms of the time, it would be very, very difficult for us because we keep engaging the Guyana Elections Commission to see if they're going to take our assessment and really look at it, analyze it, and see if it makes sense. So it would be a little bit more time.
Thank you very much, Lennox.
Thank you, Neil.
Lennox Truman from the Liberty and Justice Party talking to us there.